12 o'clock on your Wednesday afternoon now. Welcome in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Terry Ford to be along with me here in just a moment. You know, Dave, if I didn't know any better, I think I remember it snowing a week ago. Am I correct on that? That we were all panicking and buying milk and bread and all those kind of things like right at a week ago, right?
It all seems like a dream now. Yeah.
I'm looking at a very sunny Gervais Street. The sun is coming in through the window. It's pretty hot in here. What a difference a week makes, I guess.
I saw a couple of pretty young ladies walking down the street this morning, doing their daily walk, and they weren't all bundled up today. They were looking very summery.
We'll leave it at that, Dave. How about that?
Well, I'm just saying. Sure,
I believe you. I get where you're going. We won't go any further.
Spring is here.
Yeah. It's nice that the snow's moved its way out, hopefully.
Yes.
What, 75 on Friday with some rain? I'll take it. Absolutely. Heading into the weekend. Sun was not shining last night on Gamecock men's basketball, unfortunately. On the road in Athens, taking on a Georgia team that they themselves had been scuffling, 4-game losing streak. You know, they turned the ball over 8,000 times against Florida on Saturday and got drugged down in Gainesville. So out of all the 8 games that Carolina had played in conference so far, you looked at this one and said, okay, I see a realistic path where they might be able to get this one done. You go out there and, God love, the first possession of the game, literally, you may not have even gotten to sit down on your couch yet when this game started. And you see, I think it was Ugasuk, tries to pass to Jacoby Wright, and it turnover. Goes past him, out of bounds or whatever. Turnover, start the game. It's like, oh, my God. Still. When you get deep enough into a season, making the same mistakes over and over again, it's very likely you're not going to fix that. It's just going to be part of your identity now. South Carolina's the team that turns the ball over. You just have to, unfortunately, go into every game expecting that Carolina's going to turn the ball over 15-ish times, somewhere around there, and hope. And again, we've seen it. We've seen the defense be able to do this. Hope that the defense plays well enough to give you an opportunity at the end of the game. Now, when you get in those end of the game opportunities, you have to capitalize and put the plays together to win the game. And last night, they went on a little bit of a run to tighten things up there late in the game, but you never really felt like Georgia was about to lose control and that Carolina was really going to claw back in and win the game. So now you drop to 0-8. 0-8 in conference play. You're 0-for in the month of January. The last game that you won was against Presbyterian, which was a month ago tomorrow. And you're just kind of adrift right now. You're below 500, which from like an optic standpoint, getting below 500 after you started out 10-3 through non-conference play, including a big win over a ranked team in Clemson in overtime back in December, you didn't think it was possible for this team to perform poorly enough to fall below 500 over the course of the season. And here we are with still a month and a half left in the regular season to try and claw out of it. Oh, by the way, you got 4 more ranked opponents coming up here in these next handful of weeks, or next 2 weeks, before you get your next reprieve, if you want to call it that, against LSU coming up in mid-February. So it's not looking any better as of right now, unfortunately. And again, it's not that you want to give up on the team. It's not that you want to be negative. They're just not giving you a lot of things to be positive about. And it starts with the turnovers. It's a basic fundamental thing. And we're not at practice. We don't see the drills that they're running. But I'd be willing to bet a lot of money, including the money that people are betting that Terry's going to be later than usual today as we tick past the 6-minute mark so far to start the show. I'd be willing to bet a lot of money that they are focusing on dribbling. They're focusing on passing, those basic fundamental things to make them better so they don't have these turnover problems. But something about getting in game situations, and it's not just at the end of the game. I know on Saturday against Mississippi State, they turned it over 5 times in the 5 minutes of overtime. That's an end-of-the-game situation that they blew. But then to come out of the jump and turn it over, 6 times the first 6 minutes yesterday, that's a completely different subset of the game. That's different pressure. That's different everything going on at that point in time. And it's still the same consistent problem. And I am not going to sit here and think that suddenly it's going to get fixed, right? Suddenly it's going to change. It's going to be a whole lot better, against A&M or against Florida or whatever it may be. No, this is who the team is. As I said, you go into every game now expecting them to turn the ball over somewhere around 15 times. Sometimes maybe 1 or 2 less. Sometimes maybe 4 or 5 more. And hoping that they can find their way defensively to make it competitive enough. And it's not fun basketball to watch. It's not. And you hope at some point they find a way to get at least one conference win. If nothing else, just win one conference game and get the egg off the board, right? Because I know I heard Bill talking about this. Everybody remembers 0 for seasons. People tend to not remember 1 or 2 win seasons in terms of conference play. So if you can find a way to beat somebody, that doesn't save the season by any means, but it definitely makes it look a little less worse than what you're in the middle of right now. And I'm legitimately wondering where the point comes where they just roll over, right? Again, they erased a 14-point deficit late against Mississippi State, forced that game into overtime. A lot of effort there. They were trying. Last night, again, they made things interesting in the second half, started making some shots and got it down to single digits. Didn't end up doing enough to really close the gap too much, but you could still see the effort was there. But as you go into playing A&M, as you get to go on the road to play Kentucky, as you play Florida again, at what point is this team just going to go belly up and say, all right, that's the season, we're not playing for anything? I hope they never do, but you got to think it's coming sooner rather than later because you're just digging yourself deeper and deeper into a hole. And last night, again, I go back to it. With a Georgia team that was coming off of a 4-game losing streak, that they themselves had turnover problems, it seemed like the most winnable game you'd had in conference, and you lost by 11.
Yeah. Turnover first possession. 10 turnovers first half.
Coach Paris wanted to shove his head through the court when that happened.
Well, he said, we'll play it, baby. We'll get it. He goes, can I put my gear on and go play?
Dust off that Worcester jersey.
Exactly. He looked good in that. You and I were kidding about it earlier. Probably doesn't fit the way it used to.
Probably not.
Put that thing on and go play.
Although that's when shorts were all the way up here.
Oh, yeah. You got the John Stockton Hooter Girl shorts. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I sent it to you, and I want to play this. Maybe we'll get in the next segment. Lamont Paris, right when he first started talking to Derek and Casey in postgame last night.
Fresh out of the locker room.
Yeah, just still full of everything. He basically, one of the things he talked about was questioning the competitiveness of this crew. And he said, you can't let people just take the ball from you. You can't let people just push you around. And, and then all of a sudden, once you get down big, now you're ready to go scrape and fight. He goes, we get competitive. We just aren't consistently competitive for 40 minutes. And it's you got to go out there with some dog in you.
Yeah.
And you got to go out there and you got to play and you got to be intense. And it feels like these guys just for 40 minutes, they don't bring it the whole time.
And they have portions, they go on runs. And again, they did a good job closing the gap at the end of regulation against Mississippi State. But for whatever reason, whether it's in regulation, whether it's in overtime, when it comes down to the very end of the game, they just make more mistakes than ever.
Yeah, and part of that, I think, again, obviously part of that is it's the end of the game. How many of these guys don't have confidence in themselves to make plays at the end of a game? I think that, to me, that's part of it. And Lamont said this. Part of that is the lack of confidence you've had being successful late in the game. All this kind of circles itself, right?
Sure.
If you don't have confidence at the end of the game, you don't have confidence. If you don't have confidence, then you make mistakes. How do you stop making mistakes? By doing things that give you confidence. It's like when they say to you, well, son, you need experience to do this job. Well, how do I get experience if you don't hire me? Go get experience.
Yeah, I know.
So it's just, it's tough when you haven't been successful late in the game to win, to have the confidence you can go do the things to be successful at the end of a game to win. And Lamont said something also that was interesting, and we'll try to maybe fire this one up as well. He's talking about this team. And basically what he's saying, without saying it, this team has problems from the neck up. These issues a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them can be fixed in your noggin, between your ears. And he talks about it going and talking. It's kind of funny. He's been talking about them, having a conversation. Like we talk about come to Jesus.
Yeah.
His is the basketball God, your inner basketball God. You got to go set things right with your inner basketball God.
Yep.
And you listen to Lamont say this, like, inner basketball God, Lamont?
That's where we're at.
You okay, man?
That's where, listen, that's where we're at.
Right. And so I think a lot of this, from what Lamont Paris sees, is that it's not from the neck down so much, it's from the neck up with this team. It's mental more than it is physical. Now, we can also say, Lamont, that press worked pretty good the last 5-6 minutes. Why didn't you throw that sucker out there in the first half? Why didn't you play more of that press? I mean, defense isn't the biggest issue on this team. Obviously, they're a top 50 team defensively in efficiency by Ken Palm. But it's, that you knew Georgia is sloppy with the rock just like you are.
Yep.
Once, Georgia started to get a little bit of control of the game and you couldn't score in that drought in the end of the first half, why didn't you turn the press on there? So, I mean, we're not sitting here saying, that you can't question maybe some things that's going on from a coaching side of it or a strategy side of it. But Lamont is like, look, we practice this and we work on that and we drill that. And they do it in practice. Why aren't we doing it in the game? And a lot of that is, again, in practice, you're not keeping score in practice, right?
You shouldn't.
In the words of the great Allen Iverson, it's just practice.
Yeah.
It ain't a game. So sometimes guys will do it in practice and they can't bring it to the game. There's a guy like that I grew up in my neighborhood, best practice player in the world. This dude, pick a sport, and he'd kill you in practice.
Yeah.
Once they started keeping score, he would soil himself.
The old batting cage hero.
Yeah, exactly.
Tear the cover off the ball before the game, but got up the plate 0 for 4.
Oh yeah, you put him. You in practice. My man tore it up. I mean, he was phenomenal. Put him in a game in any sport, and he just because it was right here in his head.
Yep.
Now he's playing the game.
Now the lights are on.
Yeah, the lights
now
were on, and he shrunk. You know how guys are some guys rise when the lights are on.
Yeah.
Some guys shrink.
It's like you can sing by yourself in public, or in private, and then you put yourself on stage. You still have the ability to sing, but you're not as good in front of people because you're nervous.
Oh, you're nervous.
You're worried about being judged.
Lack of confidence.
So your voice is cracking and all this kind of stuff. Like your skills are there, but when it comes time to put them on in front of people when it really matters, you can't do it.
And it feels like that's this basketball team in some ways. And then Lamont, I think, was saying that without saying it. The problem with this team, a lot of it is from the neck up. A lack of confidence, and because of that, you got guys who don't want to do anything with the ball in the last few minutes. They don't want to touch it. They don't want to. They don't want to. Like you said, they're afraid to fail, and they're afraid to be judged on failure or criticism on failure or whatever it is. But this team, I mean, it's a mental part of it's a mental thing. Not all of it.
No,
part of it's a mental thing. All right, we'll get that Lamont Paris cut from the right post game. First out of the gate with Derek and Casey. We'll hear that coming up here on the Halftime Show. Again, tomorrow and Friday, we're hanging out at Pro Swing on Forest Drive. It's our first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic, our Winter Classic. And you can still get in. And we'll give you some information about that. It's about 2 hours for 9 holes to play, you and a bud. And $1,000 first prize. You're also going to win Gamecock baseball season tickets as well. So that is, again, tomorrow. We'll be there tomorrow and Friday. The tournament also is going on Saturday as well.
Yep.
So we'll talk more about that. But we're there tomorrow, 6 A to 6 P, and Friday as well. All right, we'll come back with that Lamont Paris audio from postgame with Derek and Casey right here on the game in Columbia, Myrtle Beach last night after the loss to Georgia. That's next. David Ayer's punching buttons. Tyler's here. Terry Ford late as always. It's a halftime show on the game. All right, halftime show. David Ayer running the ship. Tyler's here. Terry Ford, we're cooking this baby up until 3 here on the game. Of course, last night, South Carolina, the men, turnover issues in the first half, shooting issues in the first half, getting down double digits to Georgia, tried to scrape themselves back in much better offensively in the second half. But still, just not enough to come. The game was lost in the last 8 minutes of the first half, basically.
Yeah, they went roughly 7.5 minutes without scoring a field goal, went 6 total minutes without scoring any points at all. And again, I think it was an 18-16 game with about 10, 12 minutes to go. And then in the first half, and then Georgia just kind of got away from them. And again, like I said, they shot better in the second half, but Georgia just kind of managed that gap throughout the entire second half, where you never really felt like there was a true threat that Carolina was going to be able to do enough to really get in there and try and win the game.
Right. And Lamont, post-game with Derek and Casey, again, look, of course you're frustrated. You are 0 for the SEC. You're coming off a year you, quote-unquote, shocked the world, went to the NCAA tournament.
And got an extension in the offseason.
And you got an extension.
Right before the season ended.
Yes, because, I mean, you were being whispered about the Ohio State gig. And you got an extension. And coming off of a wonderful year, a surprisingly fun, exciting, wonderful year of basketball, this year has gone plop. And once you had that year like Lamont had last year and the program had, Tyler, here's what you do. It's human nature. Okay, we're good. We're on the right track. We climbed the mountain.
Yeah, they said
we got it here ahead of schedule.
This is the step forward this year, and everybody's aspirations this year was okay. Get back to the tournament, get to the second, the second round or whatever it may be, and go from there. And again, when you're likely not even going to get past the first round of the SEC tournament at this point, it's like, ooh, talk about a fall off.
So Lamont obviously is frustrated. The team's frustrated. I mean, you think these, there's guys on this team don't want to be 0 for the SEC. Not at all. And some of these guys were on the squad last year that went in the NCAA tournament. They surely weren't expecting anything like this.
Right.
So here's Lamont post-game coming over, talking to Derek and Casey. And basically Lamont was asked about, the game. Was it just shots weren't falling? Was there a lack of competitiveness? The turnover issue? So Lamont started off by hitting the competitive part of the question. Hit it, Dave.
But our level of competing, we got to learn to compete. You have to compete. You have to. If you're a competitive guy, they don't just take the ball from you. They don't deny you on the wing when let's say the play is all triggered by you getting a catch on the wing, right? It's been happening for years and years. A catch on the wing, and until they throw Gary Payton the glove, comes back in and denies you that on the wing. I just don't think we should be denied on the wing like that, And so we were more competitive. We were more competitive. We dug a hole. But then still, we still had plenty of miscues even in the second half. And then I'll tell you, so it's a day you have 17 turnovers, but then it's also, you give up 11 second chance points. Mm-hmm. That goes 71 turns into 60 right there, just with the second chance points, right? Shoot poorly from the 3-point line. At least we made some free throws that at least kept us in the game. But we got to find a way to pass to the same guys on our. I don't want to dumb it down. I don't want to dumb it down.
Right.
And I would guess we spend more time passing and catching at practice than 95% of teams in all of college basketball. That's just a downright fact. We have to find a way to not let guys take the ball. Some of it is competitive spirit. Some of it is competitive spirit.
Well, which is interesting. And he's basically talking about a play where you go to get the ball at the elbow on the court. And to have someone deny you that spot, I can see why Lamont's frustrated. It's one thing to deny, the post. You get guys, they'll post defense, they'll deny the post, they'll double, they'll have a guy who good defensive post position who is denying an entry pass, whatever. But to be able to deny a guy at the elbow, that's a whole to allow a defender to deny you at the elbow is a whole different a whole different ball game.
Right.
And so I hear what Lamont's saying by, that's frustrating. That our guys are allowing the defender to dictate to them. But it comes back to look, let's think about it. Last year, you had guys like B.J. Mack, Talon Cooper, Michie Johnson. They had some dog in them. They had some grit in them, right? This year, who's the guys with the dog and the grit in them?
I mean, nobody consistently.
No, they're just not.
You'll see spurts of it. We've seen moments where CMB can be that guy. I thought late in the game when they finally got him, under the basket and he was aggressive to the rim and things like that. It was good to see. It's like, okay, well, where's that been for the other 35 minutes?
Because we heard Lamont, during Carolina calls last week talk about Colin Murray-Boyles is not comfortable demanding the ball. That's the dog in you. At some point, you would like your best player to go, okay, it's my time to settle this thing down. We need a bucket. I'll go get us a bucket, or I'll make a play to get somebody else an easy bucket. There isn't that consistent dog in you kind of guy on this basketball team. The guy that leads the way with, okay, it's time for us to slap the floor and get in people's grill.
Yep.
Or, okay, all right, during a timeout, the guy to look over, slap his cup down on the ground and go, all right, bleep it. Let's go out here and do something. I'm tired of this. Let's change this game. Let's roll. It doesn't feel like you have those guys in that locker room that are consistently on that level of leadership, competitiveness that leads the crew.
And you can't force somebody to be that. You either have that leadership quality or you don't. And you can't say, all right, CMB, you're the best player on this team. Go out there and be that guy. He either has it or he doesn't.
Right. And you can't force a guy. A lot of times your best player isn't that guy. You'd like for him to be. Yeah. Like you want them all to be like a Michael Jordan, right?
Yeah.
Where
as people naturally gravitate towards
the best player.
Again, that doesn't mean you're going to be that vocal guy and the guy to, when everybody else is down saying, hey, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to get back in this game, whatever it may be. And it does seem like, and you hear the frustration from Paris, who, again, is usually pretty even-keeled, lacking that.
Yeah, there's the competitiveness is just, it's not where it needs to be consistently. They got competitive in the second half.
Yeah.
Got after it.
Yeah.
But in the beginning.
Too little too late.
Yeah, you've already dug yourself that hole. Like, Paris said, you dig yourself the hole. Now you want to go get, but you got to be from the beginning.
And again, it doesn't slow down. You got another top 15 team coming in here on Saturday in A&M. And you're going to play 4 games, the next 4 games against ranked opponents. Your next reprieve is against LSU in 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Now, this team has been much more competitive at home.
Yeah,
so that's the good news at A&M is at CLA.
Yeah, and look, right now I'm fully expecting this to be a tight game down to the last couple minutes, and something, whether it be free throws or turnovers, is going to fail them once again.
I'll say this. You better be competitive and have some dog in you against A&M, or they might get 100 rebounds. Because that team's calling card is throw it off the glass, let's get an offensive rebound and score. Yep. Let's get to the line. Texas A&M is massively aggressive.
Oh, yeah.
So you better match that or you know. But we've seen them match it over here.
Sure.
At home. Auburn, Florida, Mississippi State, we've seen it. Just on the road, it's not the same.
And look, it feels like if they're going to win a game this year, it's going to be at home.
Yeah.
Because you get a different team on the road. And outside of that Vanderbilt game, the road's not treated you too well, including last night at Georgia. So, yeah, whatever team you get at home, that seems like your best chance.
Yep. Hey, Carolina calls tonight and tomorrow night, 6 p.m. We'll hear Lamont tomorrow night with Derek Scott tonight. Dawn Staley along with Brad Muller. Carolina calls 6 p.m. again tonight with Dawn, tomorrow night with Lamont right here on the game in Columbia and in Myrtle Beach. All right, it's halftime show. Oh, coming up on 12:30. What have you missed in the world of sports? Maybe you just woke up. Maybe you haven't been paying attention. We'll try to fill you in the best we can next here on the halftime show. Tyler Head, David Ayer, Terry Ford till 3 on the game. Oh, in case you missed it last night, one of the things we've been talking about is the loss for the South Carolina men to Georgia. Down by double digits most of the game. Got it finally under 10 late when they started pressing and Georgia started turning it over. But you never felt like that run was coming.
Well, it felt like every time Carolina hit something big, Jamari Thomas hits 3 or something like that. Well, guess what? Georgia go down the other end of the floor and do the same thing and kind of negate whatever you had just done.
Again, a bad shooting first half, much better in the second half, but 17 turnovers. You had 10 turnovers in the first half, didn't shoot the ball well at all. That's a recipe for getting yourself down big. And that's what happened last night. And South Carolina takes the loss at Georgia. They'll try it again this weekend, this Saturday versus Texas A&M. You can hear that right here on the game in Columbia and also in Myrtle Beach. Also, in case you just woke up, this is interesting. Former Dallas Cowboy and Green Bay Packer head coach Mike McCarthy is no longer planning to coach this upcoming season. He's going to sit it out and come back again in the next coaching cycle, which will be after the 2025-26 regular season. I thought he'd be the New Orleans Saints head coach.
I mean, when you had guys like Schefter basically saying it was a slam dunk that's what was going to happen, it seemed like it was all but a formality at that point that, all right, well, here in the next day or so, they're going to announce him as the head coach and put down in New Orleans and see if he can, turn that ship around. And he's basically saying, I don't want to go to New Orleans by saying this. Like, that job was all but his if he wanted it, and he's like, I don't want to go there.
Well, that's what it feels like. There's no offense to Kellen Moore, who most likely will be the Saints head coach. He's had 2 interviews now, and they say he's the front runner. Mike McCarthy was in New Orleans. He coached on Sean Payton's staff before he took off and started his head coaching odyssey with Green Bay and Dallas. They know him in New Orleans. He knows Mickey Loomis, the GM. He knows the lay of the land. And at the end of the day, let's just be objective. Ready? You're Mike McCarthy. Here's New Orleans. Who's your future franchise quarterback?
Yeah, I don't
know. You're in cap hell.
Yep.
You have been resisting the burn it down and rebuild that you need to do. You had an excellent draft a few years ago, but since then your drafts have been So, and you're not brimming with draft capital.
Nope.
So what about that job sounds enticing to you, Tyler Head?
Not a whole lot.
Besides the fact it's 1 of 32.
It's basically a guarantee that you're going to be able to float somewhere between, 4 and 6 wins?
Yeah.
Which, hey, in the NFC South, it's a division that's not great. That's not actually far from winning it, to be honest with you.
Right.
I mean, Tampa, the Falcons collapsed in the last month of the season and handed it over to Tampa. So it's not exactly the strongest division, but like you said, you don't have the resources you'd want ideally coming in compared to like what Vrabel's getting at the Patriots, where he's got a young quarterback in Drake May that's going to be the franchise. They got a ton of capital. They got a good drafting position, all those kind of things that are going to be able to work to his advantage. You don't really have that in New Orleans.
And the thing is, your players who are good, your core guys are all getting older for the most part. And then the ownership situation, a little weird in New Orleans as well. Tom Benson passed away. His wife is the owner, but there's some stuff with that family.
I read a good in-depth article by Wright Thompson about the Bensons and the severing from the family. A lot of messy stuff down there.
So basically, you want to go to a team and take over a football squad with strong ownership that will support you, upper management you're on the same page with, a franchise quarterback, if nothing else, a young one who you can develop. And then the other thing is, do you have draft capital? Do you have cap space? Blah, blah, blah. New Orleans is not checking many boxes, man.
Well, and again, Mike McCarthy having been head coach for, 20 years now, basically, he knows what to look for. He knows what's a good situation, what's not. Kellen Moore, if he ends up getting the job, again, he's never been a head coach before. He's not going to know all the ins and outs necessarily right off the jump. So he may not see it as big of a hurdle as somebody like McCarthy did, and he'll go there and see what he can do with it, obviously. But McCarthy knows what's up. He's been on many successful teams with 2 of the biggest organizations. I wouldn't say the premier, because the Packers are run a whole lot better than the the Cowboys are as of right now, but he's seen what winning looks like, and he's seen what successful roster construction looks like, and it seems like you're fighting an uphill battle down there in New Orleans.
And he just went through the craziness that is Dallas.
I don't blame him for wanting to, you know what, I'm going to take a year, going to relax, he's got plenty of money, going to go do some deep sea fishing, maybe golf a little bit.
Sure.
You know what, when I get the itch for football, I'll hop back in next year.
I've always wanted to do some scrapbooking. I want to chase my ancestry.
You know what, he can go backpacking in Europe. How about that?
Because New Orleans doesn't look super stable either in some ways, right?
Well, there's a reason they're the last team to hire.
Yes.
And they were the first to fire their coach, the last to hire. That should tell you something.
Yeah, so I think Kellen Moore will get the job. Look, I'd love to see Kellen Moore be successful. We'll see. We'll find out. He's 30, early, mid-30s now, I think, Kellen Moore. And his track record is a little up and down as an offensive coordinator, but he's a very smart young guy, and someone eventually was going to hire him as a head coach. Now, New Orleans... And Kellen Moore will take the job in a second, by the way.
Sure.
Because he just wants to be a head coach. So you take that job and you buy what they're selling, and you hope at some of the red flags you can help, take them down, and you can get the organization back to being what it was. Mike McCarthy looked at it and went, I just went through hell. I don't need to go through anything else.
Not saying that he couldn't get them back to solid ground, but it's not for a guy like Mike McCarthy. And there's a reason why a lot of people were talking about him potentially being the Bears head coach, why, Dallas blocked him from being able to interview for that job, because that seemed like the perfect situation for a guy like McCarthy to come into, where, again, you have a quarterback, you have good talent around him, you've got decent cap space and stuff like that to be able to work with, saying, okay, I see the path where I can get this thing turned around relatively quickly. If Mike McCarthy's looking at New Orleans and like, man, it may take me 3 or 4 years to really get this thing rolling, do I want to wait that long? Probably not.
And so if you're Mike McCarthy, you look at that and go, you know what? I'm just not into this place. This is not going to be the healthy next step for me as a head coach.
Don't tempt me with those beignets.
That's right.
That's not going to work.
So Mike McCarthy's going to sit it out. Kellen Moore most likely will be the head coach in New Orleans before it's all said and done after the Super Bowl. Kellen Moore will most likely be named the head coach. This was interesting. Brett Bielema has been quite active, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's tweeting up a storm, all right.
Yeah. So the latest news on Michigan's sign-stealing scandal dropped yesterday. Ross Dellinger from Yahoo reported the program plans to fight the charges involving Connor Stallions. That's when Jim Harbaugh was the head coach. Well, I'm reading this report from On3. An old video of Harbaugh has surfaced on social media. Harbaugh was the 49ers head coach at the time, produced some interesting quotes about some different things that people might look at today and find it relevant as well. So Brett Bielema, of course, is now froze on me. Okay. So Brett Bielema had his, there we go. I got to get to, of course it froze. Okay. Yeah, of course it did. Okay, so, I always love when that happens.
Wait a minute. I got reinforcements for you here.
Yeah, help me out here. Help a brother out.
This old clip of Jim Harbaugh came up in which it said, hold on. I got to wait for it to load for me, too. Got to love technology.
Nice. Yeah, technology's our friend right now.
Okay, so an old clip of Harbaugh when he was with 49ers said, if you cheat to win, then you've already lost. Again, this was over a decade ago when he was back, with San Francisco. Brett Bielema quote tweets this. It says, "Really? Why did you leave? Was looking forward to playing you, but understand why you ran to the NFL. See you in the future, and can't wait."
Bielema then put up another clip of an old Harbaugh quote. This one was Harbaugh explaining it's important to tell the truth, especially when being considered a leader. He used an example of his favorite daytime television judge to get this, I guess, Judge Judy.
Oh, Judge Judy is his by far favorite.
Oh, absolutely. Bielema put up 3 emojis, laughter, and a football.
Yeah.
So, Bielema, again, why? I mean, I know, and Jim Harbaugh doesn't give a rat's.
Yeah. Does Jim Harbaugh know what Twitter is?
Yeah, or
probably not.
Or does he even care what Brett Bielema has to say? Probably
I doubt it.
So, at the end of the day, it's almost like, whatever. But Brett Bielema's out there and active. Now, again, Jim Harbaugh, when you're talking about, again, when you get up there and when you step on the morality stage,
Yep.
always be careful.
Yep.
Just say about Brett Bielema, man, you got a lot of free time. All right, that's what's happening in case you just woke up here on the Halftime Show. We'll get to Firehouse Sub Text the hour next at 803-404-6100 right here on the game. Time for our Firehouse Up text, the hour, 803-404-6100. What do you got there, Tyler Head?
It's funny how Brett Bielema has become just like public enemy number one. So today's January 29th. A month ago, on December 29th, people knew he was the coach of Illinois, but nobody here had an opinion about the guy one way or the other.
Nope.
That's very much changed in the past month, especially with what happened in the bowl game. Nameless Texter says, if future proves past, Brett Bielema's Illinois is going to go 4-8 next season.
Yeah.
Because his current trend, 5-7, 8-5, 5-7, 10-3. So
next year, 5-7, 4-8.
Maybe 5-7.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Makes sense. Was that text from S. Beamer?
You know what? Doesn't specify.
Or are you just saying?
But if it was Shane, he's keeping it anonymous. They didn't exchange Christmas cards, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, and Bielema, it's really funny how he's become so active on social media.
Well, his team's good.
Well, is he just, feeling, got a puffy chest guy going?
Yeah.
Won 10 games.
And you know what? Again, our interest in Illinois peaked when we found out we were playing him in the bowl game. So maybe he's been doing this for a while and it just gets lost in the shuffle of everything else going on in the Big Ten. But yeah, it seems like in the past month he's been more vocal than I can remember.
Or how about this? What did you say a second ago? This time last month, half of our fan base couldn't tell you the head coach of Illinois.
Probably not.
Half our fan base probably said, well, they played football at the University of Illinois.
No,
Brett Bielema knows that.
They take the basketball team and put them in shoulder pads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like year before last. All right, so Brett Bielema knows that he needs all the run and shine he can get, right? All the promotion, all the marketing. This could be Brett Bielema also say, hey, look at us. Look at me. Look at me. I'm the head coach of Illinois. Look at us.
That's true. Because what do 17, 16, 18-year-old kids pay attention to? Social media stuff.
So guess who might be putting himself in their space?
That's a fair point.
Future recruiting purposes, building a brand, whatever. It could be just Brett Bielema being a salesman.
That's true. Very true.
It doesn't really matter. Here,
strike while the iron's hot. When you have, because if he's 2-10 and saying these things,
nobody
who
cares.
Go back to your corner. But hey, 10-3 season, give them credit. They had a good year. Beat Carolina. You got a little bit more of a platform now.
So he could be running with it to see if he can help out his program, so to speak.
Maybe so. Just make sure you T-bar before you take off running, I guess.
Exactly. And here, no one cares. They don't like Brett Bielema. It doesn't matter. No, it matters. We don't like the guy.
But, man, if for some reason, like Illinois ended up on the schedule this fall and they came to Willie B, that would be the most hostile environment we've seen in a while.
How much fun would that be?
That'd be great.
That'd be phenomenal. Phenomenal. So we appreciate the text like always, especially when, we're making fun of Brett Bielema. So 803-404-6100. What we're going to do here in just we got football in the 1 o'clock hour, obviously sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. We're going to use a little bit of Jeremiah Donati, who was on the new athletic director at South Carolina, was on the postgame show with Jay and Elijah yesterday. I thought Donati was really good.
Oh, very insightful.
And the one thing, if we put the three top things, it feels like in this hire of the new AD, it would be money, money, and money.
Yeah.
Because Mr. Donati talked a lot about money and generating revenue and revenue streams and, building, piles of money financially. Because, look, at the end of the day, we know where this is going. It's going to get there somehow in some way, shape, or form, but you're going to have some type of $20 to $22 million cap that you can use.
The formal hearing is on April the 7th. Funny enough, the day of the men's national championship basketball game. And if things go the way we think it's going to go, green light's on. And we're off and rolling in a, 3.5 month time span to get this figured out before football season gets here.
And when you hear Donati talk yesterday, it's about getting the money. Because I've said this over and over and over again. Universities, colleges, institutions of higher learning, they're businesses. And businesses don't like to lose money. Businesses, even if they're making a profit, a business they don't go like this. Hey, last year at this time we made $100 million. This year we only made $50 million. We still made $50 million.
Yeah.
You know what they're saying?
You lost $50 million.
We lost $50 million.
Yeah.
They don't want, even if they're making profit, they don't want to lose profit.
That's why everybody's crisscrossing conferences because, hey, we have the ability to go make more in this other conference. You know, geography be darned. Let's go make more in the Big Ten than we are in the sinking ship of the Pac-12 or whatever. Let's go do it.
And I'm telling you that if you don't go out and accumulate the streams of revenue needed, some of the people that will suffer will be the non-revenue generating sports that you're spending money on and not making money.
Yep.
It's where this world's going.
Yep.
So we're going to hear some stuff from the new AD, Jeremiah Donati, coming up next here on the halftime show as we go football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. David Ayer, Tyler Head, Terry Ford, halftime show on the game till 3. All right, 1 o'clock hour, we just yap about football and more football and things that relate to football and all that cool stuff. Sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the game. David Ayer, making sure we stay on the air. Tyler's here. Terry Ford, we go till 3 here on the game. All right, so Jeremiah Donati, the new athletic director at South Carolina, on with Jane Elijah on the postgame show yesterday, was talking about, first of all, the contract extensions. I mean, Donati just got here, Tyler, and they're handing out contract extensions.
Yep.
Ray Tanner, of course, started the process with Dawn Staley and Shane Beamer. And then, a week after Donati started? 2 weeks tops?
Yeah, well, he started on January 1, so 2 weeks.
Couple weeks?
Two-ish, yeah.
So here's Jeremiah Donati talking about those contract extensions for Dawn and Shane.
He had the ability to say no, right? But Coach Tanner did a nice job working through those contracts in the fall. And, first things first, they're two great coaches. We want them to be here for a long, long time. And so those were kind of two things we needed to shore up pretty quickly. So it just so happened that they just kind of in succession, boom, boom, came up. But really happy we have those secured, and we've got the future to look forward to with both of them. So, obviously women's basketball and the success they've had speaks for itself. And, Dawn just continues to elevate the program to new heights. But, Shane, just what he's done, and if all you got to do is look at recruiting, the trajectory. One of the things that really impressed me about him when I spent some time with him early, and this is before the contract was officially extended. I spent some time with him talking about what did you learn from the 5 and 7 year to last year. Because they've got, if you've been over to the football operations building, they've got, kind of all these mantras and sayings and words. That's really cool. And he said, you know what? He said, we found in talking to some of our guys that those were just words, that we had lost kind of that core culture. So we got back to basics, whether you're the first string quarterback or the fifth string punter. We don't have five punters, but we wanted to make sure that you understood what it meant to be part of the Gamecock football program. So I was really impressed with how they kind of started over, if you will. And I think we saw it last year. There was obviously great team chemistry. And so that told me that this is the right guy for the job or reaffirmed that rather. Right. And so I was really excited. That was my first kind of real up close in person impression of Shane.
Interesting story about Shane. Look, Dawn's Dawn, and we get it. It's the best women's basketball program in America. Place is packed. Totally understand why you're handing out a contract extension to Dawn Staley.
Yeah, a one-loss regular season is a down year.
When the women lose, people are just like in shock.
Yeah.
It's like, what? They don't lose? Like, ever. So, Dawn, we totally understand that. We sit that to the side because that's, again, a no-brainer. With Shane, I thought that was a very interesting story Donati told about talking to Beamer, what he learned from the 5 and 7, because it's always interesting, and we've asked Shane that question when we've had him on shows going into this past year. What did you learn from 5 and 7? What did you pick up? Because remember, Beamer flipped over everything, right? Changed a lot of the coaching staff, changed how they condition and strengthen these players. Shane was looking at everything, including himself, he would tell us. And Donati telling that story of, you have those words and mottos and mantras, and a lot of teams and coaches do this stuff. But it was interesting that when Shane talked to those players after the season, it didn't feel like they were following the words and the mottos and the mantras that were all over the place.
They became buzzwords.
Right. It just became
good.
hollow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot. And I give Shane credit for digging deep enough to find that. Players will tell you, and you feel good that your coach, the players he talked to, felt comfortable enough to say, "Can I be honest with you? Here's the deal, dude. Those words became just words. We weren't living them. We weren't breathing them. We weren't following them. We just saw them up." And I think sometimes, remember, going into that 5 and 7 year, you'd won 8 games. You went to the Gator Bowl. You took out 2 top 10 teams who were trying to get in the college football playoff. Like we talked about Lamont Paris after last year. There's that human nature of, we did it. We're here. We've arrived. We've made it. Sometimes when that happens, Tyler, maybe you just take for granted those words mean something, or the mottos or the mantras or whatever, that, hey, we won 8 games with the Gator Bowl. Everybody knows what this stuff means. But then when you go through that 5 and 7, maybe part of what happens to you, and you don't see it coming, those words stop meaning something to the players or the people in the program.
Yeah. Well, when you're winning, everything feels good and everything just makes sense. Oh yeah, we're fulfilling those, whatever those words were, obligations or whatever they may be. But again, when you're struggling, you have to take a hard look at everything, and those kind of end up being one of those things. And it goes to go back to the story of what he said about learning from the 5 and 7 year. Again, Coach Beamer has only been a head coach here. He does not have this track record of 10 to 15 years to fall back on and say, okay, well, he was a head coach at this other place, and they had this bad season, but the next year they did this, and the year after that they were fine. So this is just a dip year because we've seen this happen before. You don't have that with Shane Beamer. You don't know what a 5th year of Shane Beamer looks like because it's never happened before as a head coach. So you really do have to analyze things step by step and say, okay, here's where you were. How'd you get here? How are you going to stay here, and how are you going to keep things here going forward? And again, the conversation from what Donati said was good, and they feel like the program's headed in the right direction and continuing to take steps forward. And because of that, Shane Beamer got locked in through 2030.
Have you ever worked at a place like that? Because I have, where they got mottos and mantras and sayings, and we're this and we're that, and you weren't.
Yeah,
you just weren't.
Yeah,
I mean, it was just like empty words.
And the people at the top are very disconnected from what's happening at the bottom. That they almost kind of feel like ghosts sometimes because you never see them. It's like, how do they know what we're actually doing here?
Right. And do they care?
Do they care?
Are they putting up these empty mottos and mission statements and words?
Which looks good on the piece of paper, the press release, or the social media post. That's great, but in the actual groundwork of what's going on, I don't think they have a clue.
Yeah, are you following up your words and your mottos and your mantras and actually rolling up your sleeves and getting in there with the people that are supposed to be using those words and mantras to do what all the people on the high horse are saying when they send that stuff?
Sure.
Sometimes, and to that point, there's such a disconnect from the people laying out those sayings to the people who are actually executing it, and it just becomes a hollow. Look, we've all worked with it. They don't care. Those people, upper management doesn't care. Corporate doesn't care, right?
Yeah, refer to our mission statement.
Right, exactly. Hey, do you have the company handbook?
Yeah. Did you recite the company Pledge of Allegiance this morning?
And so I think that to Shane's credit, once he got that feedback, he didn't get defensive.
No.
He took a step back and said, we got to fix that because we're supposed to be living these words and these sayings and these mantras.
And he was honest about it the entire offseason. Like, he knows the 23 season was a failure by not at least getting back to a bowl game and taking such a step back to where we talked about it. Nobody's talking about you in the offseason because nobody cared because you didn't give a reason to the year before. Now you're in a position where, guess what? You're going to be a pretty hot commodity. You're going to be talked about as, a preseason top 15-ish team probably. And Lenore Sellers is going to be on short list for the Heisman Trophy. And, what can Nick Harbor do in year number 3 and all this kind of stuff? Like, you're a point of conversation because you've made yourself valuable enough in the eyes of everyone in the country to warrant that. And again, if you dip back down to being 5 and 7 again, or worse, then people are going to say, okay, he's good for a good year every couple of years, but it's not consistent.
You'll get the Brett Bielema text about Shane.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
What's coming next year.
Yeah.
4-8, baby. All right, here's Jeremiah Donati on the postgame show with Jay and Elijah yesterday, the new South Carolina AD. Let's get cut 4, Dave, talking about everything is kind of like obviously insane in the world of college athletics right now. Here's Donati talking about what can happen to maybe get this thing to where it makes some sense.
I got news for you. These issues are going to continue to pile on and compound until we get some federal help. And I'm not asking the federal government to run college sports. We're asking for help from an antitrust protection, from maybe even collective bargaining. There's got to be a way we can make rules without being accused of colluding. And, these are just kind of basics. Federal preemption, so we don't have 50 state laws and 50 attorney generals that are trying to outbid the next. I mean, these are existential threats to not only football, but to all of college athletics because of the downstream effect. So if we don't get that, I got news for you. There will be another lawsuit. This is, by the way, this lawsuit, for those listening at home who may not be familiar, there's only a 10-year. Right. It only goes out 10 years. Right. There's the great unknown after that. And so my hunch is it's not going to be better. Right. And so this $20.5 million will look like $30+ million by the time you get to 2030 when you just add the 4% every other year. And so this is when going back to looking at our business differently, this is a real threat to all of our sports programs and to us here at USC.
He said the thing.
He said my two words, baby.
Said your phrase.
Collective bargaining. And, and he brings up this is only a 10-year Band-Aid.
Yeah.
This is not a forever Band-Aid. And for people who always, when you say collective bargaining, people throw up in their mouth because you equate that to professional sports and unions and all this other stuff.
Sure.
And everyone says, well, collective bargaining, every 4 years you got to do it again. I go, wow, just like professional sports have an end date on their bargaining agreements, they have to redo them. But this agreement, it's going in place, is not the end-all, be-all final say. It's a 10-year agreement in principle, and then where you back at again.
Yeah.
So something has to happen, and God love everybody who says it. I get why you say it. I understand. I'm very rarely stunned anymore, Tyler. Very rarely. I will be stunned if the federal government helps, giving them antitrust exemptions. I would be stunned.
Yeah, and especially with how long this has gone on, you get less optimistic because it feels like the needle has not moved a whole lot in the couple years they've been trying to do this. And Donati made a point yesterday when they were starting the conversation to remind everyone, because again, I get it. People are sick of hearing about NIL. People are sick of hearing about this lawsuit and stuff like that. We're here because of legal reasons, because what the NCAA was doing was illegal. This is not because everybody wanted college football to shift in this direction or college sports in general. There is a legal reason why this is happening, because what the NCAA had done for decades and decades was illegal and they shouldn't have been doing it. So now we got this whole mess on our hands where, again, if we would have structured this 100 years ago, we're not talking about it because it would have just been that way the entire time. But we're trying to clean up this 100-year mess and trying to make sense of it, where, again, unless you get some kind of CBO, you're just going to keep going back to the courtroom, some kind of federal help. You're going to keep going back to lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, and who knows what this thing's going to look like.
And we'll come back as we go football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Donati talked about NIL and revenue sharing and pairing all that together. And he brings up this, we'll let him expound on it in one of the cuts we'll have coming up. This whole, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, financial cap of 20 or 22 million, this wasn't the idea of the universities.
No.
This was settling a lawsuit that if you didn't settle it, you would have owed, $14 billion.
Yeah, basically say every former player that never got the opportunity to benefit from NIL, essentially.
Basically, you're out of business.
Yeah, you're done. Okay,
it was over.
Where are you finding $15 billion?
Right. You had two choices. It's like I always say, like for me, I hate peas, I hate sauerkraut. It's like putting two plates in front of me. Terry, you got to pick peas or sauerkraut. Which one do I hate the least? That's what the NCAA got. They took probably the peas over the sauerkraut.
Yeah, one that you could manage to swallow.
Right, without having it come back up. All right, we'll get some more Jeremiah Donati, the new athletic director at South Carolina, who was on the post-game show yesterday. Get a couple more cuts talking about the NIL space and revenue sharing and things of that nature here on the halftime show as we roll football in the 1 o'clock hour. Like always, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the game. We're rolling football in the 1 o'clock hour here on the halftime show, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. We're kind of taking the football part, at least in the first few segments of our football hour, and kind of focusing it on the off the field, where it's at. Where with listening to New South Carolina Athletic Director Jeremiah Donati talking with Jay Nalaji yesterday about stuff like. Yeah, fix it. Thanks, Tyler. About the things like the NIL and revenue sharing and the financial future of what goes on with the athletic program, because that's a huge deal in today's world about how good you can be. What kind of ceiling do you have? Part of that deal is the money. If
you are not able to spend up to the full amount in what we assume this new era is going to be, you're likely not going to have a chance. Because guess what? The best talent's is going to want to go where most of the money is. Mm-hmm. And if you do not have the dough to pony up to the Georgias and the Ohio States and Alabamas and all those teams, well, guess what? You're just going to be a middle tier below them. Because
it puts you behind the eight ball like the other things do with competing against a Georgia. Yeah. Is their brand, their success, and then you throw in another one. Oh, and they now have more money than me.
Yeah, and look, the NIL component of this is a different story, which I'm sure we'll get to here in a minute based on what Donati said. But getting yourself to that maximum of this salary cap or whatever we want to call it is requirement number one. Get yourself there. Mm-hmm. Well, for what you as a university can compensate your student athletes with, which he said yesterday it's going to be 4 sports, which I'm assuming is football, men's and women's basketball, and I guess probably baseball. Yep. And then go from there. And then past that, the NIL and all that kind of stuff. But make sure you are able to get to that maximum from what you can pay your athletes from a school standpoint. You get that, then take care of the other stuff after that.
All right, here's Donati talking with Jay and Elijah. Let's go to cut 3 first, Dave, about how comfortable are things and where do they stand with revenue sharing?
Well, as it relates to the House case settlement, I mean, we are operationalizing the department for what it looks like the next 5 to 10 years. And, I'd be lying to you if I told you we didn't have more work to do. We have a lot of work to do. And so we're kind of building the plane as we're flying it. And that's not, an issue.
You're not alone in that respect.
You're germane to USC. That's every school, whether you're in the SEC or the Big 12, the ACC or the Big 10. Everyone's going through the same thing. So I'm not saying we're far behind other schools. We're building this, in real time. And I like how it's looking. It's not without additional expense. There are some from a contracted, like one of the things just very basic operationally, we need to identify people that are, if you just said for a second, let's just assume, and I'm sure we'll talk about revenue distributions in a moment. You saw the news from the Department of Education. We're going to probably be paying student athletes in 4 sports. Let's just make that assumption. And so that's probably 125 to 150 student athletes. We need people in the department that are negotiating with agents and families. We need people that are writing these contracts, administering these contracts, balancing and supporting a cap management system, and ultimately submitting this through the SEC as part of terms of the settlement. So there's a lot of things that that we just don't have people right now that are doing those. And so whether those are new bodies or new job functions, I mean, those are things I need to we are spending a lot of time to make sure we're building for the future. So that's more expense, and so we've got to be really mindful. That adding $20.5 million next year is not insignificant. You may have seen some news. There are some other Power 4 institutions, notably, I think it was Michigan State and I think it was Ohio State, 2 perceived as the big ones that operated a loss this year. Yeah. And so this is real. And every school needs to think about how they operate their business differently. And so we're not exempt from that, and we are thinking about it. And those are going to be tough conversations because it just can't go on the way it has gone. One of the things I said is that, someone was giving me a kind of a gripe about the House case settlement. I said, you have to remember, this is a legal settlement. This was the alternative to going out of business. Right. So this was not like we didn't sit down and design this, beautiful plan. This is not how any of us would have liked to set this up. This is what the trade-off was for not going out of business. The trade-off would have been losing $14 to $15 billion legal settlement and having to completely, gut your athletics department. So I think that's important.
You heard what he said right there, right?
Yep. Yes.
Turn that on for you.
Yeah. Sorry.
You had a heck of an answer, though.
Yeah.
You really did.
I did.
Just the mic wasn't on. He said, completely gut your athletics department.
Yeah, you got to like start from scratch.
That's the alternative to finding the money, finding the different streams of revenue, whether it's through, donors, big time boosters, money people, Williams Brice, which the idea that Williams Brice has the least amount of corporate suites is crazy.
Which, again, they're addressing that with this long form project that's going to go over the next couple of years to generate revenue by, I think it's 90 suites they're trying to get up to, because they got, like 36 or something right now, which is very low compared
Lowest
to the average
SEC.
in the SEC. So there's a revenue stream. And again, whatever this project around the stadium's going to be and whatever that can produce, where you have something feeding in to this every single year, where you're not having to go back to the well at the end of every fiscal year saying, okay, we got $20 million this past year. How are we going to do that again this year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you can't live like that. That's what we talk about the NIL space. Yeah, like let's say like Ole Miss, the Grove Collective at Ole Miss, right?
Yeah.
They've been killing it, correct?
Sure.
Right now. What happens in year 4, year 5, year 7, year 10?
It's like if you don't have a job and I handed you $5,000 and said, here, use this for all your expenses for however long you can, and hey, great. And you burn that up in a couple months, then you say, okay, well, now I need $5,000 more. Well, I don't have that for you this time. Better go find a job.
Right, gave it to you once.
Exactly, but you have a job where you continually have money coming in. You say, okay, I know at the end of this 2 weeks or month or whatever, I get more of this exact number amount that I can live off of for however much longer, the next 2 weeks, next 2 months, whatever it may be. Same thing here. You got to have those constant revenue streams so you always have money coming in, where you're not scrambling to figure it out. Like, okay, we're good this year, but next year, because again, you're probably going to be signing these guys to long-term deals. Hey, you're coming to Carolina. Here's a 3-year deal. Here's what the structure is going to be. You're going to make this in year 1, this in year 2, and this in year 3. You don't want to be like in year 3, like, oh crap, we can only pay like half these guys or half these girls what we're expected to pay them. Like, no, you got to have a structure to it.
Yeah,
Which again, there's people a lot smarter than us that have been on this for a while and positioning themselves. So this isn't oh no, this is happening in a couple months, we better figure this out. They've been working on this for a while.
Well, and you don't want to go from, we got 20 million, okay, we got 8.
Yeah.
I mean, just you can't live like that.
Because you know what that can lead to? Lawsuits.
Yes, lots of them. And here's the thing, too, is you heard what Donati said. Then you've got some hard conversations about the life of your athletic department and what it's going to look like. And what are you cutting then? You're cutting non-revenue generating sports.
Yep.
You're looking. Things become a spreadsheet.
And as you mentioned, only 4 sports are expected to be a part of this in terms of the athletes getting paid. So what happens to the rest? You have to adhere to Title IX. There's a lot of
stuff going on
hoops
here,
to
man.
jump through here. And again, Jeremiah Donati is making a handsome salary to get this job. He's got a lot on his plate.
And this is and now you see why the new world and how you're looking at athletic directors. This is where it's going now. A guy who can look at the finances of this university and the finance of the athletic department and the finances on how do you move it around to maximize your sports success. How do you go get more money, find more revenue streams? Can you look at Willie B and get a vision of what you can do to make money not only in that stadium but around it with the projects you're looking at?
These jobs are going to be more stretched than they ever have before. And Beamer talked about it, recently about, or when he was at the basketball game the other day, about the general manager role in college football. And while South Carolina does not have one of those, that's essentially what Donati is. He is the general manager of all of your athletics, where he's looking at the money coming in. He's looking at the talent that you can acquire. He's looking at, facilities and upgrades and all those kind of things. He's going to be stretched in 20 different directions, unlike any athletic directors of Carolina's past. And that's just going to be the new normal going forward as we embark on this new era of college sports.
Yeah, I mean, you also are a major fundraiser. A major fundraiser is the athletic director. And the background that Jeremiah Donati has, that includes hanging out with Lee Steinberg and being an agent, you're also negotiating with a lot of people. You're dealing with players and who's going to get paid what. And you're dealing with negotiating maybe revenue streams and contracts and ways to make money to fulfill all these financial obligations that are coming. So, and that obviously relates to football first and foremost.
Yes.
Football, and more football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Hey, you know how much a Super Bowl ad is going to cost?
More than I make.
Barely.
I mean, we can't get the 107.5 The Game ad on the air this year.
Well, if we include Dave, I mean, Dave's loaded. He drives a Beamer. He's loaded.
What was that company that had like the 1 second ad a couple years ago? How much did that cost?
So funny. I forget how much that was, but that was hilarious.
I'm sure we'd get a decent price on that.
Can we afford a 1 second ad?
Maybe.
Just put our logo up real quick.
Yeah, we can try it.
Yeah, Dave drives a Beamer. He's got a lot of money.
Yeah, Dave, you wanna pawn the Beamer and
help us out
see
there,
if
bud?
we can get a Super Bowl ad? Or you know what? Sell the
Well,
Larkin.
it's due for its annual checkup. So, yeah, probably.
Sell the autographed Larkin Poe album.
We can get
Please.
millions.
Please.
Millions for that.
I'll be buried with those.
Yeah, we're not prying those out of his hands.
If there's a fire, you save the Larkin Poe or the cats?
Larkin Poe.
Larkin. We'll tell you how much the Super Bowl ad costs next on the halftime show. David Dare, Terry Ford, Tyler Head on the game. Now, what we're talking about is a lot of football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Tyler Head, David Ayer, Terry Ford. It's a halftime show on the Game. And again, you could be listening just the old-fashioned way, 107.5 The Game in Columbia. You could be listening to us on our affiliates in Florence and Myrtle Beach as well, 100.5 and 100.3 The Game. You could be watching on our cool live stream at The Game TV Radio on YouTube. How you doing? How's it going? Hello? How you been? And sponsored by Shepherd's Glass, powered by Integrated Media. We appreciate those folks as well. Or you'll be hitting us up on our 107.5 The Game app. However you're doing it, we appreciate you hanging out with us. Okay, at least 10 commercials to air during the Super Bowl on Fox have sold for, you want to give it a whirl?
I already saw the headline, so it's $8 million.
$8 million. Well, way to go. Nice job.
Well, I do have to peruse the same websites as you for the purposes of this job, so we do end up reading the same things a lot of the time.
$8 million, man. $8 million bucks for a spot.
That's what, half our salary?
Well, combined, we'd get to 8.
Yeah, sure.
It would take us 3 together.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny. Around almost 124 million people watched the Super Bowl last year. And more than 115 million watched in 2023, the last time the Super Bowl aired on Fox. Let's see. Anheuser-Busch, Meta, PepsiCo, Frito-Lay, Taco Bell, Uber Eats, and others will vie to win over more than 120 million viewers.
Those are the big ones usually.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And, it's one of those things where over 100 million watched the AFC and NFC championship games combined.
Yep.
So if you add the casual sports fan that typically doesn't watch the AFC and NFC championship game, that's going to be watching the Super Bowl because it's become what? A must-see appointment television event.
Oh, it's an entertainment event. It's a football game that just happens to be taking place between commercials and a big halftime show.
Right. And really, there are people who go with their friends. They go to a party because it's the thing to do. It's almost kind of like New Year's Eve.
No.
Let's go to the party, hang out.
And every other sport's gotten out of the way.
Oh,
You're not going to find an NBA game tipping off after 3 o'clock on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Women's basketball, the same thing. Everybody gets out of the way because they know this is the sporting event of the year.
And so you've got everybody's attention. It's the in thing to do with the casual fan, the person that likes parties and events.
Yeah.
This is the thing. So you take 101 million people who in some way, shape, or form are interested in football games, the AFC and NFC championship. Now add the party goer, who the event person, the person who says, I really don't pay attention much to football until the Super Bowl because I like to go and watch the game because it's the Super Bowl. Take all those people together, you are going to easily, in my opinion, beat the 124 million from last year.
Yeah, probably so. And again, you have a lot of storylines. You have the Chiefs going for something very historic. And I know the people, I'm not going to watch it because of the Chiefs.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You have Eagles, who people either love or hate. Very polarizing team, a head coach that's, very easy to dislike. Maybe you're going to tune in to see them lose or hope that they lose or whatever it may be. Obviously, Andy Reid and his success, speaks for itself. So, again, people can complain about the Super Bowl matchup all they want. I think it's going to be a good game at the end of the day. Maybe not the offensive showcase that Bills and Commanders would have been. Probably more of a defensive battle given the way these two teams are built. But I think it still should be a fun and competitive game.
I remember a couple years ago, it was a fun game to watch, and both teams scored in the 30s.
Yep.
So I also think it's the idea. All right, the Chiefs are going for history. The Eagles are there to stop history. I just think it's a very interesting dynamic on that level alone, and you added a lot of the other flavoring. And plus, the people who hate the Chiefs want to watch now.
Exactly.
Look, it's not like the Cowboys are a whole other level of love and hate. But when a team gets to the point where the Chiefs have gotten, where they're a dynasty, and they are, the cute, cuddly, lovable things you liked about them when they first popped on the scene now get on your nerves.
Yes, of course, because they've been too successful.
You always want to watch the villain get beat.
Everybody has a line of success when it comes to, obviously outside of your team. You want your team to be as successful as possible. But like you said, the first year when they finally got, into the Super Bowl, hey, great story, won the Super Bowl, very neat, beat the 49ers. They go back the next year and lose to the Bucs, go back the year after that and end up beating the Eagles in the process. Hey, that's cool. Now here we are 3 years later. It's like, do I want to see them win 4 out of the past 5 Super Bowls or 5 out of the last 6, whatever it is? Because it was a year when the Rams and the Bengals played. A little too much for people. We want teams to have success, but not too much success.
Well, here's the funny part. That Mahomes and the Chiefs have become what Brady and the Patriots were when Mahomes and the Chiefs first popped up.
Yeah.
Everybody was rooting for Mahomes and the Chiefs to knock off that nasty dynasty in New England.
Remember when New England got a preferable call in the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs? Everybody's, the Patriots still getting the calls, and, they don't want to give the Chiefs an opportunity. Now it's switched, and it's flipped.
Right. So it's very interesting. So I think on that level alone, there'll be more people watching this. And then when you see 101 million watch the AFC and NFC championship games, now you're going, ooh. And by the way, we did a Twitter poll the other day, 2 days ago. I think finished up yesterday. Poll question of the day: who are you pulling for in the Super Bowl? A, go Birds, Eagles. B, want to see a three-peat, Chiefs. C, a meteor. The winner, a meteor, 49%. Second were the Eagles at 39%. The Chiefs, only 12% of the folks wanted to see the Chiefs win the Super Bowl.
Well, that's kind of the interesting thing about the Super Bowl. Again, it's turned into an entertainment extravaganza. You can still go to the party, and hey, this year I'm looking more forward to the commercials and the halftime show. Gonna watch the game because it's on, but I don't care either way. I want to see what Doritos is gonna roll out for a commercial and how Kendrick performs at halftime. Like, you can adjust your area of interest, because there's so many options.
Yeah. Can the guy that hits the dump button at halftime keep up with Kendrick Lamar?
Ooh. You know what? For buy or sell next week, it's actually a good question.
There you go. All right, real quick. On 3, they put together a list of the top 10 coaches in college football. We'll go from 10 to 1. Number 10, Josh Heupel, Tennessee.
Okay.
Number 9, James Franklin, Penn State.
Actually, feels kind of low, but
Number
okay.
8, Brian Kelly, LSU.
Feels kind of high.
Number 7, Dabo Swinney, Clemson.
Okay.
Won 2 national championships at number 7. Marcus Freeman at number 6.
Okay.
Dan Lanning at number 5. Kalen DeBoer at number 4.
Feels a little high.
Steve Sarkisian at number 3.
Okay.
Ryan Day at number 2. Kirby Smart at number 1. I get Kirby.
The top 2 makes sense.
I get Kirby.
I do think Dabo still deserves some benefit of the doubt for the 2 national championships to be higher than 7?
Dabo's a little low.
Yeah.
I think the perception of where Dabo has painted himself as old angry man screaming at clouds has hurt him in this thing. I think Dabo should be a little higher.
I think this is J.D. Pickell, I believe, that put out this list, and I don't know the exact criteria he's going with. If it's definitely like a where you currently sit right now type of thing, okay. But if we're kind of looking at the entire body of work, yeah, definitely Dabo needs to be higher than that. And I don't know if I'd put Heupel over Brian Kelly, but Heupel's obviously got Tennessee in a better spot seemingly than LSU right now.
I think Brian Kelly's unlikability hurts him with people.
Yeah.
I mean, the guys...
Franklin should definitely be higher than 9.
I mean, Franklin... Look, here's
we like to rag on him, but...
Okay, Marcus Freeman played for a national championship.
Yep.
Kalen DeBoer played for a national championship. Not to be mean, Dan Lanning's team soiled themselves being the number 1 seed in the college football playoff.
Yep.
Steve Sarkisian's been in the college football playoff 2 straight years. I get that. But let's be real here. Dabo Swinney's won 2 national titles. Brian Kelly has been multiple times in the dance, whether playing for the national championship against Alabama or being 2 college football playoffs at Notre Dame.
And again, are we asking where these programs sit right now, or saying, okay, here's the entire body of work, what this coach has done?
If you're looking at body of work, I think Swinney and Kelly should be higher than a Marcus Freeman, a Dan Lanning, or a Kalen DeBoer for body of work. If you're saying, and really not to be mean, it wasn't like Alabama last year was phenomenal under Kalen DeBoer.
They underperformed given the talent and what the expectations were.
Right, and Marcus Freeman's done this once.
Yeah.
And Dan Lanning really hasn't, I mean, again, underachieved.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it's kind of an interesting list.
Sure.
It really is. If I get Kirby Smart at number 1 right now, yes, absolutely. All right. Firehouse Sub Text the hour is next. 803-404-6100 on the halftime show as we talk football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. David Ayer, Tyler Head, Terry Ford hanging here on the game. We'll get to our Firehouse Sub text the hour in just a minute at 803-404-6100. A couple quick things. Tomorrow and Friday, we'll be hanging out at the first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic. It's over at Pro Swing on Forest Drive. You can still get in. We still got a little room for you, 803-528-1617. If you and a bud or a pal or a relative or whatever, you want to jump in and play, it's two-man teams, $150 to register for the two-man teams. You can book between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. It's a 3-day event. We'll be there for Thursday and Friday, but also there'll be a golf on Saturday as well. If you win the whole shebang, you win $1,000. That's first place. Second place, $750. Third place, $500. Plus, we'll be drawing Gamecock baseball season tickets for someone who has registered for the tournament. Call Pro Swing 803-528-1617, 803-528-1617. Pro Swing Golf, our first annual Pro Swing Golf Classic. Also, we're doing our over-under contest, Gamecock Traditions. You just go to 1075thegame.com, look at the little flippy thingy, click on the image that says Gamecock Traditions over-under contest. The over-under for the week, Colin Murray Boyles rebounds versus Texas A&M. The over-under is 8.5. So you just, again, go to 1075thegame.com, click on the contest, pick either over the 8.5 or under the 8.5. Fill out the little form, take you a couple seconds, pop, click, and you are in. And if you get it right, you'll be put in the pool of all the people who got it right. And we'll snag a winner who gets a Gamecock Traditions gift card. That's at 1075thegame.com. All righty, man, what do you got there on the old Firehouse Sub text line?
Nameless Texter says, won't be watching the Super Bowl for the first time in decades. I'll watch the commercials on the internet. You know, they spoil most of the commercials now anyway.
Oh, they're out early.
Because it used to be, you actually had to wait, oh, hey, what's Budweiser or whoever going to do this year? But yeah, now on Wednesday, be like, hey, here's Uber Eats Super Bowl commercial. You can watch it on here.
Yeah, it's interesting how they leak their commercials now ahead of time.
I read something about that a year or two ago, and I think it's more beneficial to do it that way because you're already going to get the exposure on game day itself. Now you're getting additional exposure because people are curious on getting the Wednesday before the game. Hey, here's the link to see what Doritos is going to do, and 3 million people watch it or something like that, and that's a segment, an audience you wouldn't have had that you're already going to have on Sunday. Now you get an extra bit of that on Wednesday or whatever.
And the person always says this, because you can't watch every commercial because at some point you got to go to the bathroom.
Sure.
Or whatever. So we all miss a commercial or two. So now again, maybe you can see something that you didn't get to see for whatever reason.
Maybe.
And the other part is we all want to see, all right, is this commercial going to be really funny? Is it going to make me cry? Is it going to make me whatever? Is it going to be terrible? Is it going to be great? So we all have a curiosity on the Super Bowl commercials anyway, right?
Yeah, and we all become critics. Because after every commercial, you turn to the person around you, the people around you, be like, that one wasn't very good.
Or man, that was so funny.
Yeah.
It's all, because again, all of a sudden we become ad agency experts. Boy, that sucked.
Yeah.
What was that? Oh, yeah. And, look, and we always do this because this is the way it is. Every year it ends up like this. Ready? And not as good as it used to be.
Yeah. I remember, 5-6 years ago when I was a kid.
Let me tell
These
you
are the
something.
commercials.
Those things right now, those Budweiser frogs. Yeah.
You can go online and there's YouTube compilations of just Super Bowl commercials from 2000 or 2010 and what Terry Tate office linebacker I think was one of them.
I love Terry Tate.
Legendary one. There was the Monster Jobs one I think that had the dude crying that was really funny. There's all kinds.
Yeah, I mean, look, we always it's like it reminds you of Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Everybody had their era of Saturday Night Live they grew up on, right?
Yeah.
And that's the best era of Saturday Night Live, and all the other eras suck.
Of course.
And same thing with Super Bowl commercials. Oh, let me tell you something. Back when I was young, those commercials, you didn't want to leave the room. And, everybody has their own thing with that. And it's just like Saturday Night Live. Whatever era of Saturday Night Live you grew up on is the best and the funniest and the coolest.
It's that Doritos commercial's cool, but they had a time machine one time. It was great.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's got that way. Oh, no, it's nothing like that one they ran in 2002. I remember the first time the Clydesdales played football.
Yeah.
Oh, it was great. It's just the way we are.
It is. Yeah.
It is.
Everything used to be better.
Yeah, whether it was or it wasn't doesn't even matter.
Well, and right now, this is going to be somebody's eventual favorite era of Super Bowl
Think about
commercials.
that. We're going to dump all over it, and in 20, 25 years, they're going to go,
This is somebody's good old days.
ain't nothing like in 2025, man.
In 2025, they had that Bitcoin commercial that was just great.
So good. Those Bitcoin commercials stink today. All right, so thanks for the text. We appreciate it, 803-404-6100. If you're not watching the Super Bowl, okay, it's fine. No wrong with that.
You know what? If you're not watching, tell us what you are watching from 6 until 10 o'clock.
I would love that. And text her again. I'm not picking on you because it's fine.
I'm curious.
But what are you going to be doing?
I don't know what else is on.
Yeah, are you just going to binge Netflix?
Yeah, please let us know.
I guess. All right, what's trending at 2? Coming up next, sponsored by Gamecock Traditions and Traditions Fine Jewelry right here on the Halftime Show on the Game.
2 o'clock. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Terry Ford will be back along here in a couple of minutes. As we roll along on your Wednesday, it is time for what is trending at 2 here on the halftime show. And, of course, last night, men's basketball goes on the road to Athens, Georgia, falls to a Georgia team that had lost their past 4 games, heading into last night's contest, 71-60. And look, it was a game that started off poorly for Carolina. Turnover right off the first drive, which was very frustrating. A very dismal first half when it came to shooting the ball. Better in the second half and made it interesting, I guess is the right word, late, but to get it down single digits. But you never really felt like they truly had what it took to erase the deficit that Georgia had, because it seemed like every time Carolina would go and make a bucket on one end, Georgia would follow that up with one of their own on the other side, and you end up with yet another tough loss, dropping you to 0-8 in conference play, and a winless January, and now under 500, which again I think is the most glaring thing when it comes to optics. You know, conference record's bad, obviously, but man, especially when you were 10-3. Right? To tell anybody at the start of January, you're going to fall below at 10-3, you're going to fall below 500 before you get your 11th win. I don't think anybody would have believed you. I don't think anybody would have thought they were going to run roughshod and, you know, go 8-0 or 7-1 in conference play necessarily, because you had tough opponents coming up. But to be winless, that's tough. And you got 4 more ranked opponents on the docket these next 2 weeks, starting with Texas A&M coming up on Saturday night. So it's not going to get any easier. And last night, once again, Carolina is tripped up by the same thing that's been killing them really throughout this entire string of losses in conference play, and it is a lot of turnovers. And cut number 7 here, Dave. Coach Paris last night said, you know, familiar territory with, once again, the same culprit.
Well, we find ourselves in, unfortunately, a familiar territory with a similar culprit in terms of we turned the ball over 17 times. We gave up 11 second chance points. And those things impact the game. They just do. I'd like to live in a world where you could do those things and still have a great chance to win, but that's not reality. And so we have to figure a way to stop turning the ball over. Whether that's a change in what we're doing offensively, too many decisions. It's not as much decision. Sometimes it is. I think sometimes it's just, a guy crawls into us and he really impacts our ability individually to complete a play that, over the years, I have considered to be a pretty garden variety normal play. And so we have to get better at that. We spend a lot of time at practice passing and catching, probably more than 95% of teams in the country, I would say. But it's got to translate over to the games. So,
and again, we've seen this become a consistent issue. In the 8 games you played in conference so far, you've had 1 game where you've had less than 14 turnovers. That was against Auburn, again, a game that came down to the wire, and Carolina just barely loses. But 17 last night. Same thing against Mississippi State. 16 against Florida. 24-25 against Vanderbilt the other week. This has just become a consistent issue. And it's gotten to the point where it's probably not going to get fixed. Whatever the reason, and you hear the frustration in Coach Paris's voice when he's talking about whatever the reason this is happening is not because they're not working on it in practice. It's not because they're not drilling it into these guys' heads, because I can assure you they are running probably more passing and dribbling drills in practice than they ever have maybe in their life, or at least since they started playing basketball as little kids, hoping to correct this issue, but it's not happening. It's when the lights are on. And look, here's the thing. You may look phenomenal in practice. On Monday or Tuesday or whatever, when they're out there, running drills and stuff like that, and they may look flawless in execution, saying, okay, we finally got this problem fixed. And then you go into the next game, and when the lights are finally on, the scoreboard's on, all those kind of things, they fall apart and have these same issues over and over again. Again, the game started with a turnover. And it's just like, oh boy, here we go. 6 in the first 6 minutes of the game. And just consistently happening throughout the game as well. The final 5 minutes, or overtime, against Mississippi State. 1 turnover every minute. That's not going to get the job done. And as much as we'd love to say, well, they'll figure it out, I don't think they are. I just think that's who this team is as of right now. And again, I understand Coach Parris's frustration with having to watch this happen on a game-in, game-out basis because, again, he can't go out there. He can't put on his uniform and shorts and sneakers and go out there and make things happen. He's got to rely on the guys out there on the court to get it done. And, again, he does have to coach them up. He does have to put them in positions to succeed. But it's not happening as of right now. Speaking of which, let's hit cut number 9 here, Dave. Here's Coach Parris talking about the roster limitations versus the execution and where the problems are falling with this team.
Well, roster limitations and execution probably go hand in hand. The only thing I'll say is that in the league's overall better, I would say. I'd say most people, Mike White probably, I don't want to put any words in his mouth, probably feels like he has a more talented team than last year. I think a lot of people in our league probably feel that. The league has gotten better, but we're doing almost the same things, right? And so certainly at some point it comes down, I haven't changed my practice habits necessarily, or I've tweaked some of the things that we do just to simplify a couple of things, but certainly it comes down to personnel's ability to execute at times.
And look, he's not trying to throw anybody under the bus. Coach Parris is not that kind of coach. And at the same time, again, he's the one that acquired the talent. He's the one in the offseason that went portal shopping, knowing the kind of guys he was going to have to replace in Talon Cooper, B.J. Mack, Meechie Johnson, and trying to find suitable replacements if he didn't feel like he had those on the roster to try and fill in those gaps. And what he brought in was not the same. And look, last year, that team was maybe just the perfect collection of talent that fit Coach Parris's style, and it worked. And this year, it's clearly not. And you don't have a lot of other options to turn to. I know people are talking about, hey, just maybe Cam Scott can go out there and make a difference. Cam Scott's played. He's played a good bit. I know he's been sick these past couple of days, but he's played a lot this season. And I think most people would say he's not played up to the standard that people expected him to. That doesn't mean he's a bust or a failure or anything like that. He's still got time in his college career, but for this season, he's not quite the difference maker that people thought he was going to be, which is frustrating. And as you go into the final 10 games of conference play, knowing that you're effectively not really playing for anything at this point, save for a miracle run at the SEC tournament in Nashville, which I don't have high hopes for that, maybe you throw him out there more just to learn, right? Just to take his lumps. Because, again, you're punting on this year at some point, saying, okay, well, we expect him to be one of our main guys next year. Let's make sure he gets the minutes. Let's make sure he learns his lessons and, understands the grind of the SEC. So when he starts next season, if he's in your starting lineup, he's already experienced enough by having played a good amount of SEC basketball in the back half of the schedule. I don't think it could hurt. I don't think it could hurt at all. We'll see what Coach Parris ultimately decides to do. I want to loop back around to this. For anybody that's listened to me on the station for a period of time, I'm very superstitious. And Dave, I'll get your thoughts on this as well, because, last week we talked about your little voodoo doll from down there in New Orleans and the bad luck that it's brought in the past, 41 years since doing that, right?
Yes.
So I'm thinking about this. Coach Parris's thing is quarter zips, right? Like, that's his thing. That's his style, swagger, whatever you want to call it. Well, clearly, it's not working anymore. Whatever that magic of quarter zips were last year, where we were talking about, oh, we're the black one last night, and that one's got this record, or, hey, we're the white one, they upset whoever, and, we stormed the court, or whatever it may be. I think it's time to change the wardrobe. I know that's his thing. That is his signature. Quarter zips are who Coach Parris is. I can count on one hand how many times I've seen him out of a quarter zip since he's been here at South Carolina, including in the middle of the summer heat. He's still wearing the thing because that's just his signature. I think it's time for like a polo or a hoodie or something like that. What do you say?
Well, in my case, I worked out, got good clothes and everything, just trying to overcome the problem.
Sure.
Didn't work.
Didn't work.
No.
Well,
so I don't know.
But yours is tied directly to this voodoo doll, right? Where
as far as I know.
you had to, the texter weighed in and said you had to go back to the grave and spin around 3 times and chant a name or something like that, or at least go back to the museum and get your pin removed, right? Something along those lines, or carry a voodoo queen up a mountain or somewhere along those lines. So if we're associating success to the quarter zip, if he changes it and they start having success, like I said this earlier, if Coach Paris walked out on the court on Saturday night against A&M wearing just like one of those 2-button polos from Under Armour or whatever, first of all, everyone would be shocked, like, oh my God, I can't believe it. He's not wearing a quarter zip. But let's say they go out there and upset number 13 Texas A&M. Guess what? You got to wear that every game after this, because that's how superstitions work.
Yeah, that's true. So I guess he could try it,
What do you have to lose? You are in the basement of the SEC. Your season is effectively over right now with still 10 more games to play. It can't hurt to try. The thing that you're playing for right now is you have the ability to pull off some upsets. Carolina plays really good at home. And again, I'm expecting them to play a competitive game against A&M on Saturday night and ultimately fall short there in the end, because that's what the script of this conference run has been so far. But, man, if you change up the juju and wear a polo or a hoodie or a T-shirt or something like that, maybe that's what you need to get yourself over the hump. Again, I'm willing to try anything at this point. As silly as it sounds, if you would have told me we're having a serious quarter zip debate back in November, 2 months later, I'd be like, oh, that's kind of weird. But, hey, why not? Let's give it a shot. What do you got to lose?
You said serious Q-zip, right? You didn't say Sears.
Serious.
Oh, okay.
Sears isn't a thing anymore, is it?
I don't know. Are they online?
I don't think so. You used to get the Sears catalog as a kid, and you'd circle all the things you wanted for Christmas.
I worked there.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't recall if I've seen a Sears. They used to have, where I used to live in Athens, there was one at the mall across the street from me. It's kind of like one of those anchor stores. I don't even know if it was still open at that point. I never went to the mall. Not a fan of malls. But yeah, I'm struggling to think about last time I legitimately saw a Sears.
Yeah, I know that they had a lease program. Well, I won't go into it, but they had this lease program. They had a place where they had like lawnmowers that weren't on the thing anymore, and you could lease them real cheap.
Okay.
Then a month ago, I got $300 for paying for that lease.
Oh, wow. How about that?
Check.
Well,
Years later.
If you lease something from Sears, you might be entitled to financial compensation.
That's
but again, I'm superstitious. And if switching up the juju of wearing a different article of clothing helps this team, I'm all for it. I doubt it's going to happen, but Coach Paris, if you hear me, I'll buy you the polo if you're willing to take a chance on it. We'll see what happens.
All right, let's do it.
We'll continue on with what's trending at 2. Bill Connolly put out his list of top 100 college football games from 2024. Where did Carolina fall on that list? Hit that coming up next. Halftime show. Tyler Ed, Terry Ford, Captain Dave here on the game. welcome back in. It is the halftime show. It's our Ed Terry Ford will be back along here in just a moment on your Wednesday. Heard us talking about it. Tomorrow and Friday, we're going to be out at Pro Swing for their first annual golf classic as they break in the new facility over there on Forest Drive, and we'll be out there from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. The event's going to be going from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. if you've already signed up, and we'll be hanging out tomorrow, enjoying some food, and watching everybody play a couple rounds of virtual golf. So looking forward to that. And again, if you're out there with us, come by and say hello. And looking forward to that. And everybody over there at Pro Swing and Integrated Media, certainly appreciate them for having us out there once again. Continuing on with what is trending at 2. Yesterday, Bill Connolly of ESPN put out his list of top 100 games of the 2024 college football season. I've not been shy about this. I viewed what this past year was as the best college football season I've witnessed in my lifetime. Now, I've only been alive since 1996. 2007 held that throne for me all those years ago. And look, there should be documentaries about what happened in 2007 with the upsets, the curse of number 2, a 2-loss team winning the national championship, all kinds of things that made that season fun that I didn't know if we'd ever see replicated again. But the sheer amount of chaos that we endured this year is right on par with it. And while the end result of Ohio State winning the national championship is not surprising, that's something that most people kind of could have predicted before the season started. I don't think anybody saw the path of them getting there and achieving that in the way that they did. So I think that even adds to what the 2024 season was. So Bill Connolly puts out this list of the top 100 games of this past season. Carolina featured on this list 5 times. Unfortunately, only 2 of those were wins. So the highest ranked game he has for the Gamecocks at 21 was none other than the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl against Illinois on New Year's Eve. Now, and we're only a month removed from this game, but seriously, off the top of your head, think about something in terms of plays on the field that really stood out and were kind of wow moments or memorable moments that you think you're going to remember, I don't know, 5 to 8 years from now. Probably not a whole lot. You know what I mean? Like the game itself was fine. It was a competitive game between 2 fairly evenly matched teams. But what really put it over the top and made people talk about it was, of course, the beef between Shane Beamer and Brett Bielema. In fact, in this article on ESPN.com, he's got a little graphic at the very top of it that just has kind of a collage of various things that happened over the course of the 2024 college football season. The big center picture is Cam Scatterbo, who of course was kind of the superstar for Arizona State, but he's got Vanderbilt and their upset of Alabama. He's got the fight with Michigan and Ohio State, and then he's got Coach Beamer being restrained by an assistant as a part of this collage. So again, I think the game gets elevated to a different level for the shenanigans that took place as opposed to what necessarily went on between the white lines between these 2 teams. And again, that's the thing that I think we're all going to remember about this game years down the road is, Beamer and Bielema beefing over the T-bar situation on the kickoff for South Carolina, late in the game there, third quarter, I guess it was. Outside of that, 4 more games featured on this list, all funny enough for South Carolina in consecutive order. So he's got at 34 the win against Missouri here at Williams-Brice Stadium, the game that obviously solidified Rocket Sanders' place in Gamecock history, which already, a very good, solid, respectable season, but the catch and run to score the touchdown after Missouri had just scored a go-ahead touchdown minutes before with Jalen Kilgore giving up the touchdown to Luther Burden, and then being able to immediately go down the field and respond is a game that Gamecock fans are going to remember forever. And in terms of, and I've only, been here for a little over 2 years now, in terms of the games that I've gotten to see at Williams-Brice Stadium, that is probably my favorite in terms of entertainment value of a game. because it was back and forth, late scores, huge moments, big plays. It was a fun game to watch. And if you're just a neutral observer of college football, you would have been very, very entertained by that game. Right after that, you have the Clemson win at number 35. Similarly to Rocket Sanders cementing his place in Gamecock history with his catch and run that scored the game-winning touchdown, refusing to go down, Lenore Sellers, who, of course, still has plenty of chapters to write in terms of his time here at South Carolina, hopefully a lot this upcoming fall. If he did nothing else, the 3rd and 16, the 3rd and Sellers run to score the game-winning touchdown against Clemson is his moment as of right now. We hope there's going to be bigger moments. We hope there's going to be a lot more bigger moments because that's going to mean that South Carolina is probably going to have a pretty good year in 2025. But in terms of right now, if you said what is the defining moment of Lenore Sellers' time as a Gamecock so far, that game, the 3rd and Sellers putting the team on his back and, like Rocket Sanders, refusing to go down, scoring that touchdown and helping South Carolina pull off their 2nd straight victory up there in the upstate at Memorial Stadium has already solidified him in the hearts and minds of people with getting the Gamecock fandom for a long time to come, no matter what happens going forward. So those 2 games back-to-back, and coincidentally enough, the next 2 games back-to-back as well are Alabama and the LSU games. 2 games that Carolina was in position to win, but unfortunately came up a little bit short. The Alabama game was one that I don't think anybody, us here locally, in picking that game, we didn't give South Carolina a chance. Yeah, I know that Alabama had just been upset by Vanderbilt a week before, and we'll get to that game in a moment. We thought, they're going to be mad. They're going to be angry. The Alabama that played against Georgia 2 weeks before, that's the Alabama we're going to see, and they're going to, put up 40 points and hold Carolina to 5 or something like that, 6 points, whatever it may be. And that didn't happen. Carolina made a game out of it, came up short in the end, missed the 2-point conversion, through the interception where it was the miscommunication with Lenore Sellers and Nick Harbor, and you wonder what could have been after throwing that bomb of a touchdown to Harbor a few minutes before, recovering the onside kick. It just seemed like destiny was smiling down on South Carolina, and they unfortunately came up short there. The LSU game at number 37, 17-0 lead, feeling great. Game day had been there. The vibes were high. Everything was looking good, and then, LSU claws their way back in. You lose Lenore Sellers before halftime. Robbie Ashford gives you a spirited effort in the second half. Alex Herrera misses a potential game-tying field goal in the last seconds. There were obviously the controversial calls that did not help either, but you looked at that game, looking at both these games, saying, man, if you just did a couple little things differently, you might have won, and we'd be talking about a different story. And that Alabama game obviously was the turning point in a lot of ways for South Carolina, where after that loss was 3-3. Beamer talked about it. Mazio Bennett talked about it. They had a lot of come to Jesus meetings after that game saying, what are we? What do we want to be? And the message was, we can't lose anymore. And the regular season, they didn't do that. Well, a 6-game winning streak, finally started beating ranked opponents. Because remember, halfway through the year, the narrative around this team is they can't finish and they can't beat ranked teams. Well, that quickly went out the window. You beat A&M. You beat Missouri. You beat Clemson. I think Vanderbilt was in the AP top 25 when you beat them, but we can throw that in there as well. They erased all that in the second half of the season. That again, the Alabama game was kind of that tipping point for South Carolina. So those are the 5 spots that Carolina finds themselves in. As we go to the top of the list, I mentioned the Alabama-Vanderbilt game. That is Bill Connolly's number 1 game, the best game of the 2024 college football season, and it's hard to argue with that. Given because that's one of those things, right? That if you would have said on the day that Nick Saban retired back in January of last year, hey, guess what? Alabama's going to lose to Vanderbilt this fall, the sky would be falling in Tuscaloosa. And to a degree, it kind of was. And coming off the heels of the way they beat Georgia, which, by the way, that game is number 2 on this list. Alabama's 41-34 win over then number 2 Georgia. That vaulted them to number 1 in the AP poll. People thought, Alabama, that was Kalen DeBoer's first conference game against Georgia. Oh, so they're still the wrecking ball that they've always been. And to go in to a half-finished, First Bank Stadium, is that the name of it, out there in Nashville, and not just lose, but get controlled by Vanderbilt. This wasn't some fluke. Vanderbilt outplayed Alabama for 60 minutes in that game. Got turnovers, the whole 9 yards. Diego Pavia, the world knew his name after that game, and rightfully so because of how well that team played. And the sheer shock of it just made it a game that we're never going to forget. For whatever Kalen DeBoer's tenure is, for whatever Diego Pavia does in his career, they will always go back to that game as defining moments of their tenures at Alabama and Vanderbilt, respectively. So I agree. It's number one game. Again, Alabama over Georgia is number two, the highest ranked postseason game. Texas holding off Arizona State in overtime in the Peach Bowl, which hard to argue with that. Great game, great comeback by Arizona State. But that's Bill Connolly's list of the top 100 games of the 2024 college football season. Today is January the 29th. Greatest day in the history of the world. It's coming up next on the halftime show. Tyler Head, Terry Ford, Captain Dave on the game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Terry Ford along with you here on your Wednesday on the Game. It is time for the greatest day in the history of the world. Let's dial the clock back all the way, Terry, to 1900. On this day, the American League was organized in Buffalo, Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit, Indianapolis, Kansas City, Milwaukee, and Minneapolis. Can you tell me who won the inaugural American League back in 1900?
Who won the first one? Seattle Mariners.
No. It was the Chicago White Stockings, better known as the White Sox, of course. Brewers came in second. The Indianapolis Hoosiers in third.
One of my favorite baseball teams, the Indianapolis Hoosiers.
They're a pretty good basketball team. The Detroit Tigers in fourth. Kansas City Blues in fifth. The Cleveland Lakeshores in sixth. The Buffalo Bisons in seventh. And the Minneapolis Millers coming home in eighth.
What's a Minneapolis Miller?
I don't know, but I'm going to find out.
It's time to Google up the Minneapolis Miller.
Some of these original team names are hilarious.
Well, that Indianapolis Hoosiers, they made the movie about them, right? The movie Hoosiers was about them.
I think it was a different sport.
You sure? Okay.
Pretty sure.
Checking with you. Let me show you the Minneapolis Millers. You got anything on that?
I'm
named after the owner?
Let's see here.
Or Miller Beer?
Let's see. I don't see any Miller associated with this. Why are they called the Millers?
Like the movie Meet the Millers. Same thing, right?
Yeah, let's see. I can't figure out why they're called the Millers.
Very nice. Very nice. By the way, while you're looking that up, on this day in 1958, get this. Stan Musial becomes the highest paid player in baseball, or in the National League, I should say. You know what his contract was for?
Ooh, what year was that?
1958.
$20,000.
$100,000.
Wow. Okay.
First $100,000 player, first six-figure contract in the National League. How much is that worth today, Tyler Head?
Oh, inflation calculator.
It's your inflation calculator.
1954? Mm-hmm. Hold on. Got to put some inputs here.
Go get them. $100,000 for Stan Musial in 1958.
See if it'll let me go back that way. 1954. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Six.
Got $100,000 in there?
Yep. Calculate. That is $1,103,513.99.
That's it?
That's
Today's baseball player only making $1 million with that contract.
You couldn't get somebody off the bus.
Jeez, for $1 million.
For $1 million, no.
It's crazy. But that's Stan Musial in 1958. 11 players and 6 officials were elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame this day in 1963. Jim Thorpe, Red Grange, Bronco Nagurski, Sammy Baugh, the great Dutch Clark. You love Dutch Clark, right?
Of course.
John McNally, Ernie Nevers, Mel Hine, Pete Henry, Cal Hubbard, Don Hudson. They were the players.
A lot of guys who had awards named after them.
Yes.
On that list.
And names of guys. A lot of these we've heard of if we care about sports.
Sure.
But again, to go back to some of the names, is Bronco like the greatest football name ever?
Oh, phenomenal.
Bronco. Dutch Clark. You know any friends named Dutch or called Dutch?
Dutch Clark is one of those names like, hey, this player has done something that hasn't been done since Dutch Clark back in 1945 or something along those lines.
And, again, a lot of these guys were iconic, like a Bronco Nagurski, Red Grange, Jim Thorpe, who, got all of his medals taken away over. When you look at the reason Jim Thorpe lost medals and how it applies to today's world of NIL, you're like, seriously? Really? But all these folks. And then some of the officials that started the league, like a George Preston, who was the owner, I believe, of the Washington, what was the Redskins then, George Hallis, Curly Lambeau.
Dutch Clark. Cool enough name anyway. Mm-hmm. Nickname, the Flying Dutchman.
There you go.
Phenomenal.
There you go. Wouldn't Dutch Clark be called the Flying Dutchman?
Why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he?
By the way, on this day in 1994, if you're a boxing head, you've heard of Julio Cesar Chavez.
Yep.
Julio Cesar Chavez suffered his first loss in 91 fights on this day in 1994. Frankie Randall knocked him out in the 11th round. That's how good Julio Cesar Chavez was. First loss in 91 fights. And the guy, he fought, folks. This wasn't like some dude ducking people for a zero like Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah.
This guy fought like the best in the weight classes he was in.
Yep.
So, 2000, Karl Malone comes a third player in NBA history to score 30,000 points. The thing with Karl Malone, like Charles Barkley, like Patrick Ewing, like a lot of those dudes in that era, everybody holds it against them. They don't have a ring. You know why they don't have a ring? Because Michael Jordan's got them all.
Yep.
And Akeem Olajuwon has the other two.
If Michael Jordan didn't exist, there'd be a lot more guys with rings.
Oh, yeah. It's like if Tom Brady and our boy Patrick Mahomes didn't exist.
There would have been no Bulls dynasty without Michael Jordan.
Right. And so think about it. Think about guys who might have had their shot to, because Malone played Jordan twice in the finals, lost. Barkley got him once in the finals, lost. Ewing couldn't beat him in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Guys like, Gary Payton and Sean Kemp couldn't beat him with the Supersonics. A lot of guys who you look at as upper-level dudes in that era are ringless because of Jordan and the Bulls.
Yeah.
We have Karl Malone, 30,000 points. And remember the one year where the NBA got tired of giving Michael Jordan the MVP and gave it to Karl Malone? They said, yeah, we're tired of giving it to Jordan. It's like they were like LeBron. There were times it was like, yeah, we're not even thinking about LeBron
Well,
now.
it's like, Nick Saban, one of those national champions. Yeah, you could just give him SEC Coach of the Year every year. That makes sense. But, hey, Vanderbilt went 6-6 this year. Let's give it to their coach.
Sure. Why not? Because you know what? We're tired of giving it to the same guy.
Exactly.
The same two guys. Well, I always thought about Coach of the Year, too. It's like if you're really good, you never get Coach of the Year because your teams are always winning.
You're right on level of where your expectations are. Like, that is reserved for a coach. Like, hey, we didn't expect you to do this. Congratulations.
Well, it's always the wow. Like for example, I mean, Shane Beamer was on a lot of these lists to win. He won SEC Coach of the Year, and one of the reasons was South Carolina was picked 11th in the SEC.
Yep.
And they would go off and they win 9 games. And they were in the mix for the college football playoff. So you get love when you do things that people don't expect you to do.
That's right.
But if you're winning year, and I think Phil Jackson never won a Coach of the Year. I could be mistaken.
Wow.
And if he did, he might have won. Because
well, it's like, what's he really doing? It's Jordan.
Yeah, come on. He's got Jordan and Pippen and Kobe and Shaq.
They coach
please.
themselves.
That's right. You don't even need to be there, Phil. I've always said this. I think coaching talent is a lot more difficult than we want to let it out to be. It's not so much the coaching it on the field or on the court or on the diamond. It's massaging those egos away from the game.
Yeah. Well, watch the Last Dance documentary.
Yeah. Think about all those egos.
Yeah.
And Phil had to deal with that. I mean, you had to find a way to get your guys to deal with Dennis Rodman.
Obviously, you had to put a tracking device on Rodman to see if he was actually going to show up for game night.
And then you had to do blood alcohol level to see if he showed up sober.
Exactly.
I mean, and then you had the egos of, MJ's ego was gigantic. MJ's ego needed its own jet.
Yeah.
And then Pippen, his hurt ego. Pippen walked around butthurt all day.
Yep.
And then, some of these other role players that fit in. Tony Kukoc was, quote unquote, the greatest player in Europe. He showed up with the Bulls, and they openly tried to disrespect him.
Yep.
Just to put him down a notch or two. So think about dealing with all that in your Phil Jackson. Man, you don't need Coach of the Year. Come on, all these players are really good. Go get them. And then Phil dealing with Shaq and Kobe and the Lakers.
Yep.
So, but come on. That was easy. That's easy. All right, it's the greatest day in the history of the world. We'll come back here, Yip with Jay Phillips, as we get the handoff completed from Little Pigs on Alpine. Also, our Firehouse Sub text, the hour, 803-404-6100 as well. Do not forget, tonight, Dawn Staley, Carolina calls 6 p.m., along with Brad Muller. Tomorrow, Lamont Paris, Carolina calls with Derek Scott, also at 6 p.m. right here on The Game. Halftime show, David Ayer, Tyler Head, Terry Ford, here on The Game. Halftime show. Tyler Head, David Ayer, Terry Ford. We're going until 3 here on the game, and then Jay and Elijah will take over post-game show. All right, Jay. You're
not actually going until 3. You realize that. You go to 2:55 and something. I start at 3.
Oh, Jay's the time police now.
Well, listen to him now.
I know.
He's that guy. He's become actually guy. Well, actually. You don't start it.
So first it was weather. Now it's time.
Now it's time.
What's next?
I know.
What you
What's
want?
next?
What you got?
So who's going to be the big guest today? You had the new AD yesterday. What's today? Top that.
Today is the real expert on South Carolina athletics, one David Cloninger.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Why don't we run promotions for him? We had the little
Should ask
sounder
the PD
for
about that.
for Donati yesterday.
I mean, Cloninger obviously
The one
is-
and only.
Well, to be fair, Cloninger's more well known in the Midlands than the new AD
That's true.
at this point.
For now, yeah.
He has
Yeah.
the honor of asking the first question at every presser.
Well, if that's something.
That's high esteem.
We should have that in the promo. The esteemed journalist who asked the first question of every presser, David Cloninger, on today on the postgame.
And when he's not
he just
there,
did it.
it throws everybody off.
We got to do it more like this.
Where's David? What's
I
going
love when
on?
Shane did that. David had gone to cover. Was it like Dawn's team in Florida or Lamont or something? And he's like, "Where's
Shane was lost.
Panic set in across the room.
He's in Florida.
And then everybody's like, who wants to ask the first question? No, I don't want to ask it. It's usually Cloninger.
I don't remember who it was. Was it Rick? I don't remember who it was.
It was funny, though, because the whole thing just paused for a second. We're like,
Where's David?
Hell, what do we do? Cloninger's not here. All right, what do you got there on the old Firehouse Sub text of the hour there?
Tim from Sumter says, I will be watching the Super Bowl to see Andy Reid make history. Not a fan of either team, but I can't convince my wife to have another Lord of the Rings marathon. So there's no other option for him, apparently.
Yeah, well,
Wait, so he wants the Lord of the Rings marathon? Mm-hmm. He can't convince his wife to have another one.
I guess not.
I guess so.
Because we were talking about the people that are like, oh, I'm not going to watch Super Bowl. Well, then what are you going to watch? Like, what are you going to do?
Well, that's what I've
from
always
6
wondered.
until 10 o'clock on
Is
that
it-
Sunday night.
Well, like Tyler mentioned it the other day, like more than a third of our nation's population tunes in for the Super Bowl. You know what that means? 2/3 of them aren't.
They're doing something.
They're doing something.
What is the something you're doing?
Listen,
You know?
every other sport gets out of the way.
So-
you can't find an NBA game or a women's basketball game. They're all done by
no
4
sports.
o'clock, 5 o'clock.
Doesn't that because we're all sports dorks, right? We're all into sports. We love sports. We wouldn't miss the Super Bowl. We'll watch the Super Bowl even if it's bleh, right? Sure. We'll do that. We don't care. Seattle, Pittsburgh, bleh. We all watched it though because we watched the Super Bowl. So
Well, the Steelers are in the Super Bowl.
yeah, but if you're not a Steeler fan and you're in the Seahawks for whatever, and it just was like and the game was terrible, by the way.
I mean, if you had like the Titans and the Cardinals, I'll give you you'd be like, you know
Even
what?
that one.
Even I
That'd
might-
be a remarkable story.
How about the Jags? All right, let's really do one. How about the Jags? And give me somebody from the NFC that no one.
I'm going to stick with the Cardinals.
Cardinals is good. Jags and Cardinals.
Cardinals are good, but the Cardinals
It's not a
have
brand
like no
that people-
following.
Jags and Buccaneers?
I think Tampa's got a little following.
You think so?
Yeah, a little bit.
Maybe a little bit more than we
bit.
think. But the Cardinals, to your point, the Cardinals, I mean, a lot of times the visiting team takes over Arizona Stadium, depending if it's the Steelers or the Packers or the Cowboys. It's a Cowboy home game when Dallas plays in Arizona.
Well, because it's a big airport, easy to get to.
Yeah.
Lots of flights.
You know,
So-
nice weather.
I guess I guess the point I'm thinking is when you just said that. So we all just think everybody watches the Super Bowl because the Super Bowl. 2/3 of the country doesn't.
Yeah, give or take, 2/3 don't.
So what do you, maybe that's a poll question.
They're
There you
watching.
go.
They're like Tyler. They're watching. They're
Well,
watching their favorite
You know,
movie.
my mom never watched the Super Bowl. I should ask her what she does. She
You
doesn't.
should.
She doesn't care.
What do you do,
So,
Mom?
One year we have a room at our house where we have like sort of not sports bar-ish, but we have like a couple of smaller TVs. And so for Yucks, we had the game on the big screen in there. And then there's 2 smaller screens. And then the top screen, NFL Network was running like live stats, like basically a live box score.
Yeah.
So I put that up there. And then just for Yucks, we put the Puppy Bowl on. and every once in a while you'd hear, because there was like 30 people in the room, right? You'd be like, oh. And I'm like, wait, what are y'all watching? Like, no,
I think that's on Netflix now. I think they moved it to Netflix.
I don't know, what was it on?
It was on
Hallmark?
It was
Yeah,
on
one of those channels.
like Animal Planet or whatever it was. It was one of those channels up in.
But
the,
I think
Hundreds or
they air it live earlier in the day and then rerun it
rerun it.
after
I'll
that
tell you this.
live whatever.
You know, if you
they,
put
they,
that
they
on-
premiere it earlier in the day.
I'm gonna tell you, there are people that would prefer to watch the Puppy Bowl than the Super Bowl.
Well, I'm sure there
Let's
are.
just be honest.
And again, that's just it. We're
That's
all
funny.
proving the point. Like again, well over half this nation does not tune in to the Super Bowl.
Which is like stunning to folks like us.
Yeah.
We go, what?
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you watching?
I don't know what else.
Binging
I mean,
Barnaby Jones? I mean, what are you doing here?
Oh, that's not bad. That was a good show.
Yeah, well, Buddy Ebsen, man. I went old school for you there.
Thank you. Appreciate
Tyler has no idea what we're just talking about.
He knows who Buddy Ebsen is, doesn't he?
Sounds familiar.
Beverly
Welcome to the
Hillbillies?
lingerie bowl.
No,
Yeah, I could bring that back.
Boy, that was a thing.
See, that's what Dave doesn't watch the Super Bowl. He watches old VHS tapes of the lingerie.
Well, they had that football league. Remember that?
Old VHS tapes.
Yeah, because it was on VHS tapes. What about other VHS tapes Dave's watching instead of the Super Bowl, Jay? What do you think?
I think we've gone too far.
Hey, Jay. This is when watching the video stream is to your advantage.
Jay's uncomfortable.
No. I just.
Jay's got a lot of things running through his mind he doesn't want to say.
I assure you, it's far from discomfort. It's just being professional. How you doing, Tyler?
I'm doing well.
All right, that should be the thing tomorrow. We'll
Happy
do
Wednesday.
We'll do on the text line. We'll say, what do you? If you're not watching the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
what are you going to be doing? Or do you know
but
someone
nobody
that
listening
doesn't
to
watch?
us is gonna.
No, they might not.
Well, if
or they
you-
might know someone who
Yeah,
doesn't
if
watch.
you know
it.
someone, ask them. And
What are they
let us
doing
know.
instead of
Report
watching
back.
the Super Bowl?
Well, like I the other day, and I'd heard him say it before, but I had forgotten. But like I was watching today, and they were all talking about and Al Roker knows nothing of sports. So I imagine he's.
Really?
Like they should ask Al Roker.
He's watching the Weather Channel.
Like what is he? I don't know.
Yeah, that's it. Is Al Roker? He does weather all day. When he's finishing doing weather, does he go watch Weather Channel?
I doubt it.
Yeah, I could.
That is his Super Bowl.
Yeah, it is the weather.
He's
yeah.
probably watching Barnaby Jones. Which again, fine police drama.
What do you got coming up, man?
Cloninger, a lot of in some hoops, and we'll talk about
All right,
what's
Jay
going on there. We
Phillips,
got some fun
Elijah.
stuff too.
Post game show next. Tyler, Dave, nice work. We'll do it again tomorrow here on the halftime show in the game.